Questions like, why are we here? What happens when you die? Where did we come from? And is there a God?
The U.S. government has been shown to have had a long-term interest in Scientology.
This is a practical question here.
I know this is an illusion, or dream, or call it the way you want to call, you know?
We are a bigger threat to the people who are secretly trying to control this planet than any other group on this planet.
But the problem with an atheist is he believes that his belief is based on fact.
Oh, it's wireless. Yeah, you got wireless one.
He's impressive. He's a powerful guy.
I can't make this shit up.
The leaders of this are not just after our church, they're after the whole of this planet.
He was put here to work out his own salvation. And we feel in Scientology that we've made a very big stride in that direction.
Howdy everybody, and welcome to the Indie Scientology podcast. I'm your host Andy Donks, the Space Cowboy, and isn't it lovely to be here listening to the good old Strauss. This is a podcast for Scientologists who are not members of the church, the free zone. For people new to Scientology, this podcast is all about that odd religion you might have heard about. It's basically a bunch of self-help books and mind exercises that evolved into a religion created by American sci-fi author L. Ron Hubbard in the 1950s. Today's show is a guest interview with Scott Gordon. How did you like the last show with Ray Robles? If you liked it, please subscribe, click like, share, write a review. It all helps to get the truth out there, because the truth really is out there. It's a little too out there, and that puts a little block there, because people aren't willing to believe in ridiculous things, but the truth is ridiculous. It's now time for us to fall down that rabbit hole into the interesting world of Scientology, where up is down and down is up, where what isn't, and what... Let's just pretend like that didn't happen. Welcome to the show on this 19th of November, AD 79.
Hello, welcome.
Yes, it's after Dianetics, 79 years. Woohoo! That's Scientology years. The show's getting serious. Kansas City has a new ideologue. All right, so now they've got one as well. It's not far from the old ideologue. I think it might even be walking distance. I think it's all downtown. I think it's near the Power and Light District or something. Anyway, here's a free zone success story by Jerry Two Needle. OT8 success story. The wins I've had on this level were beyond anything I imagined. I initially had some ideas of what I would gain, what possible changes that would happen, but it soon became clear to me that I was wrong. It's funny, how can I predict what I will understand in the future? That I now don't understand. I didn't realize that just the fact that I thought I understood what I would come to understand is a false idea. If I would understand now what I would later understand, I would understand it now, wouldn't I? So there is no way I could know what I will understand before I understand it. Amen to that. I apologize for that paragraph. I don't know how to explain that in an easier way at the moment. It's very true. That's what Scientology is like, and awakening to the truth is like. You think you have an idea of how things are, but if you had an idea, then you would know what they are. Anyway, before doing OT8, I believed that I had very little left to improve within myself. After OT8, I see it in another way. The more I improve, the more potential improvement I see within myself. I now feel like I'm capable of seeing the areas in which I can improve and improve them, rather than blaming something else. It is an amazing feeling to realize that there is no end to improvement, even in the things I believed myself to be spectacular at. Haha, there is no end. That may seem discouraging to some. I understand that. I felt it myself at times. But the thing called life is not meant to have a top nor a bottom. Take a mathematical example. You can write an almost endless amount of zeros and have an almost infinite amount of zeros, but you can always put another zero down, one more zero, and so you can always improve one step at a time. This cog may be mixed with my studies while I was doing OT8. Either way, they both were a benefit in reaching this level of understanding. I now perceive an incredible beauty, no effort, and a sense of everything being just okay the way they are in everything around me. My sense of what is right or wrong has changed. The deepest understanding of right and wrong I realized was that nobody is absolutely wrong and nobody is absolutely right. There is no such thing. I've found that if I just try to look at how some people are right in the things they do, I can find something I can understand in it. I would before just disregard it and say they are wrong and move on. The amount of understanding and love for life I have gained in finding beauty and understanding in things I before believed were absolutely wrong has already blown me away. I'm looking forward to life more than I did before. There are avenues I didn't think to look into that are now wide open with happiness and understandings I'm now open to see. I usually thank Ron and Trey for the help they have given me in this. It brings tears to my eyes to look back and see how much both of them have helped me and other people on this planet. Magnificent men, both of them. This time I want to include a thank you to everyone that is working towards a better world, no matter how you choose to manifest it. People at Trey's house, outside of it, and over the internet. I really appreciate what you do. Thank you. Jerry Toneedle. Obviously, Trey Lott's PC. Cool. I thought Trey had a good OT8. Comment of the week time. This one is by Scott Gordon, who's a guest on tonight's show, and it sort of relates a bit to what he talks about during his interview. So he wrote it a while ago, but I thought I'll put it on now. So this was in the Independent Scientology chat on Facebook, and it says, failure of recognition. I think it's an interesting commentary on lack of ability to differentiate and evaluate on some members here, that Ralph Hilton was allowed to frame my recent posts as conspiracy theory, to ad hom with nasty language the very people I was trying to defend, and especially for trained Scientologists to miss the overts of almost 20 years ago, speaking loudly in accusation. More people... Sorry, this is funny because this is like a heated Facebook post, and I think that's what's cool about Facebook is that you just have these drama posts and stuff. More people came to his defense than to the fair game targets. Nobody challenged him on his blatant violation of ad hom rules. I've just pulled his nasty attack post, which was apparently quite popular after missing it yesterday. I have never once said anything nasty about Karen or attacked her. What I have written about her is simply a revelation of her work and background. What Karen's been doing to me, blocking me from groups, is the very same thing the McClarys were supposedly doing to Ralph. that he remains upset about, controlling their corner of the free zone in an attempt to get ethics in, exposing and purging and blocking and all that, which did not include one single act of violation of rights. Karen went much further, however, than simply blocking and excluding me from multiple reform groups, and she sent Mark Plummer to call my clients to third-party me in 2017 in an attempt to cost me my livelihood. This is something of what's been going on. Altered importance, assumed similarity is not similar. Your overt justifies mine, fair game. And more, mankind cannot be trusted with justice. I get that this is a third dynamic engram for Ralph and Kula and some others of you who were there some 20 years ago when Virginia defended what they were doing. No one could understand because a confusion operation to frame them for a faked ethics in terror was in full progress by counterattacks that may not always have been on target or fair. The way out is the way through, and there is no way to get through when the subject cannot be discussed without filthy, hateful labels being thrown around in place of time, form, event. What do you know about strained criticism, natter, overts, and miswithholds? And what about wrong items? The clue is how nasty. Wrong items make a person angry, very angry. This is true, and they can fuel a great degree of emotion and block reason. All right, so basically this is a long, doesn't go for too much longer, but this is, him saying stuff, and I just kind of liked it. I think it's too long as a post. I think posts should be a lot shorter, but it's just sort of the dramas that go on in these groups and stuff, and you got OSA agents out there that try and get people to have arguments and stuff. And in Scientology, you just got people who are self-determined, and so they say their opinion and they stick to it. So you get this sort of stuff. I think it's good people speaking their mind and stuff. So, you ready for a Scientology joke? All right. Scientology materials are like travel trailers. They are very valuable to you, but online they're not worth a pinch of shit. Okay, it's now time for today's guest interview with Scott Gordon. We discuss an array of different things. This interview contains a bit of speculation, meaning we discuss things that we don't fully know the truth to. So we suggest suggestions like, oh, it could be this or it could be that. You know what I mean? So like, it's like you talk about conspiracy theories and you can talk about like 9/11 or cancer viruses and the vaccines, and it's not really speculation. Like if you know it, you're like, this is what's going on in it. You know what I mean? But when you're going into conspiracies that you can't prove, you don't really totally know about, but you just want to talk about them because it's interesting, that's when it's like speculation land, because you're talking about things that you don't fully know. You haven't fully worked out what's going on, but you're saying, oh, but it could be this and, it could be that. And so that's actually why I don't think this interview is that good, because I like to I don't like to go into speculation land too much. But it's still interesting, but I try to avoid speculation land. I'd rather go with facts. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like David Wilcock stuff, where I think he goes a lot into speculation land, and it kind of ruins his stuff because you don't know, because he's so right about some things and he's so smart about some things, but then because he adds in all this speculation, you don't really know. You're like, is he totally certain? And then because David Wilcock got tricked by Corey Good, it sort of ruins all of David Wilcock's stuff, because you hear him talking about an aliens living in paradise in California, and you just like how can you trust what David Wilcock's saying now? You know what I mean? Because he was talking about he was into Corey Good stuff. So, and he also goes into a lot of speculation stuff. But anyway, so this is a bit of speculation. So it's all right. It's interesting and opens up your mind and stuff, gets you thinking. We talk a bit about intelligence ops. But yeah, nothing beats just hardcore exposing the facts and blowing people's minds. So let's dig into this, chuck on a big pot of tea, and let's hear some talk about the world's most interesting and controversial religion, Scientology.
After all, we haven't been invited, and curiosity often leads to trouble. Goodbye, Dinah. Goodbye.
Okay, today's guest interview is with a man who is like the Free Zone's own personal intelligence officer. It's Scott Gordon, the former Director of Special Affairs and Auditor. I have plenty of questions for him. He goes right down the rabbit hole, so let's do it. Scott Gordon, are you there?
Yeah, hi. Good
Awesome.
to be on the show.
Yes. It's good to have you on the show. I remember the last interview we did, I had some more questions to ask you, so we thought let's do another one later down the track. I'll just started off with something that it's a big question. I've noticed that in some of the things you've said, it seems like you think that LRH was in the CIA while he was doing Scientology or was working for the government or something. Is that right?
Yeah, the more I looked into it, both with the McLaury research that they brought out, a lot of the evidence that he was, as well as the more I research Freemasonry and intelligence agencies, I find that there's no real way to sign out of an intelligence capacity, although he claims to have signed out at the same time that he released Dianetics. That actually is a very common action for them to do to cover a new assignment. Basically, you're not in intelligence anymore, so therefore we're accepting your resignation, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of other examples of having done that.
So how does someone stop working for these agencies? I know that there's I know that if you're working for the real top secret stuff, that they actually memory wipe you and stuff. That's like a real thing, like the whole Men in Black movie idea. That's pretty much what happens and stuff. And they possibly get given a false memory of what they were working on. So if they were working on a UFO, then they'll get some false story that they were working on some propulsion system or something. But anyway, what about the normal sort of CIA stuff? Like, what happens if someone wants to leave? Do they can't do it, or what?
Well, there's different levels. I'm not an expert in this area, but David Icke, for example, worked with whistleblowers for a long time, and he had some pretty scary stories about guys that had medical devices implanted in them, and if they didn't check in every few days, they were going to expire physically. Now, that's at the very top level, though. It's not to say all agents are that. The guys who leave the agency, quote unquote, or retire and then want to write a book, they have to get their book cleared with the agency. I know that much from whistleblowers that I've listened to and studied for a long time. I've been interested in that for a long time. So I remember whistleblowers in the 90s who came out with books. People like Philip Agee is one that comes to mind. There's several others that wanted to write a book or go on the lecture circuit and talk about. There are certain things they still couldn't talk about because of their secrecy oath or because of their possibly Freemasonic oath, because almost all agents are also enrolled, especially at the top levels, are enrolled in a Freemasonic organization, and their oath is pretty vicious. So
yeah, it's like when they leave, they're still in comm with the agency. Still does some sort of monitoring of them to make sure that they don't start doing strange things and stuff like that. It sounds a bit like someone who might be in the mafia or something as like a hitman. The guy that might be able to leave and stop being a hitman, but they still will like monitor the guy a bit and keep track of him to make sure that he doesn't suddenly start blabbing to the police or start talking and stuff or being a problem. But what do you think?
I don't know if they have, used resources to shadow people that closely, but definitely if you speak up and you speak out of turn, they're going to come talk to you and warn you. If it's a minor thing, if it's a major thing, they'll probably apprehend you. So,
well, and but with Hubbard, so I mean, let's say you're in the late 40s or whatever. I mean, he was still young. He wasn't really at retirement age or whatever. So if he was in the OSS, what was it? No, the Naval Intelligence or whatever. Are you sort of suggesting that he wasn't allowed to leave that?
Well, I'm not saying wasn't allowed to, because actually I think you can resign in many cases. But what I'm saying is that his signing out appears to have been a cover, because he comes back up in some other evidence of some other things. Not only that, but he was far deeper in intelligence than people realize. If you're just following the approved authors of the unauthorized LRH biography, like Russell Miller, who was himself MI6, because I don't know that for sure, but I can tell you that he was, because I looked into what biographies he's written, and he's been allowed to write biographies for royalty. And you don't get to do that unless you're trusted intelligence. And he has all.
So who's Russell Miller?
He's the one who wrote Barefaced Messiah, which is one of the most hostile books against Hubbard, because it really takes up Hubbard as a buffoon and an idiot and a liar with respect to his naval record. So in other words, if he was in naval intelligence, it was reserves, and all he did was do some filing. So all they have on the official record is Hubbard did some filing here, and but then Virginia McLaury, who's a great researcher, turns up all this evidence. He went to various schools. She found his pay stubs and some of the Freedom of Information Act, and periods of time where he took leave of absence from school and was not, it was a cover because there was nothing on the record for months, and then he comes back and he goes back to government school. So
when you say he's taking periods of absence from school, are you talking about like when he was in university, or are you talking about when he was in the Navy?
In the Navy, and I think it was a university and he was in the Navy. In other words, it was a military academy, and he speaks of it in his lectures as having gone to, I think, Princeton to study military government, where you take over a country and you have to run the government for a while. So there was a course he was studying there.
So what is Virginia's work suggesting? Is it suggesting that Hubbard was still in naval intelligence or joined the CIA? And what's the deal with that? Because for me, from what I've seen, it seems like Hubbard was against the corrupt intelligence agencies, and he knew they were corrupt, and he just went off and did his own thing.
Well, he definitely had government agencies against him, because the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. So you have the American Medical Association chasing after him. You have the FBI chasing after him, and in their files saying this guy's nuts because he put on a good act for them. He was supposed to, according to Virginia's theory, he was supposed to be nuts. And if you read her stuff, you find that the whole idea, the operation that the CIA had going in the early 50s is, we're going to support these kooky religions, and they're going to be covers. And the cover is basically that it's got to be a religion so kooky that if you were discovered to be in it, you were not eligible to be a CIA agent. So there's this distancing, You can be a Jew, you can be a Catholic, but you can't be a Scientologist or a Mooney and be in the CIA. So there's this interesting cover that's going on because they're trying to cover all these activities so that people can't find them.
But why would the CIA be interested in starting kooky cults?
Because they make great covers, and they are wonderful for getting international intelligence, because they set up their churches in other countries.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you bring up a good point. I mean, because you've got the Jonestown cult, and probably the Heaven's Gate one as well. I mean, there are ways for the CIA to do experiments and achieve things, and then if anything stuffs up, you know, it just gets all blamed on being some kooky cult. Like, because how intelligence agencies work, and I'm understanding this because I'm understanding how aliens are functioning here on Earth, is that we seem to have alien intelligence agencies here, and they do this thing where they don't, you know, put a hat on and say, I'm CIA and I'm here and I'm doing blah, 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 blah. They have to hide their existence, so they put on a hat of being a car salesman, or they put on something else. So they're always hiding their identity, and they're probably, when they're doing really big operations, they probably talk to someone who talks to someone who talks to someone, and then that person actually does it. So then if you're investigating it, you pulling the chain or whatever, the string, I guess, and you're trying to find out who, and then you find out who, and then if you keep the distance really far away, it's hard to find out who really did it. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's how it's done. It's like Russian dolls, and if you don't open up enough Russian dolls, you never find the little piece of gold in the middle.
Yeah.
You know,
So it's probably like as in, if you think of it, if you're doing if let's say you're a low level CIA person, and you have to do something like steal someone's car, well then you go up to some homeless guy or whatever, and you go, here's $50, go and steal the car, right? But let's say this is a really important car, right? So it's hiding your identity because the homeless guy is stealing the car. Now, let's say it's really important. Then you would get someone else who would get someone else to approach the bum and then get them to steal the car. So it really, you put more effort in. And so anyway, so that's why I get hold of how you could use cults in a way to hide what you're doing.
Yeah, and also it's why, you know, the mafias and the intelligence agencies work hand in hand too, because you know, the CIA can go to the mafia to get things done.
Yes, that's what. Yeah, absolutely.
Plausible deniability. You're distancing yourself. If you get caught, that's your guys. You know, it's just it's like a they called it a brown bag operation, where the cash is in the bag and you only get it if you do the hit. You know, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, they make it so if somebody's trying to investigate them to lock them up for whatever happened, I mean, it's almost impossible to fully work out what happened and who's guilty and everything. But what are you trying to say there? You're trying to say that there was that Scientology, like because I get the Jonestown thing, because the Jonestown thing, they seem to be injecting the people with stuff. And they seem to be testing out stuff, like they had loudspeakers, you know, down in South America or whatever. They had loudspeakers. They were testing psychological warfare or drugs, and they seem to be doing stuff. What is going on with Scientology? Like, what's the testing that was going on in Scientology then?
That's an interesting question, and I'll just give my opinion. I think that to some degree, at various phases, especially the Sea Org, that Scientology was a sociological experiment, and that reports were going to the intelligence agencies regularly, and they would kind of analyze what different policies or different ways of handling people were doing. And of course, they may have had access to PC folders as well. And it may have been I'm guessing here, it may have been a pretty involved sociological experiment, or it could have been just a brief summary type report, what, you know, where they look and they, you know, connect things together, you know, different policies with different behaviors, things like that. I don't really have any idea, because it's so covered up. But
what does Virginia say? Did the McCleary say?
Well, see, that's why, you know, Virginia works so hard to uncover these little tidbits, and that's why it's a monumental task to prove anything like this is going on. You find circumstantial evidence, you put things together. Sometimes you find gold. Virginia found a reference to one of the major intelligence handlers in Britain was on one of Hubbard's resumes in South Africa when he was down in Rhodesia in 1966. And that just came out in one of her recent
Sorry,
articles.
can you say that again?
One of the major intelligence handlers in Britain, and I mean major, like in like moneyed family kind of thing, banking family, that type of thing, who was also working in intelligence and handling agents, was put on one of Hubbard's resumes that he used to try to impress the Rhodesian government when he went to Rhodesia in 1966. So when you find things like that, you find direct evidence that he was working with and for these guys. But you don't find it like a personnel record that it's still confidential. It still hasn't been released.
But what if this English guy Hubbard was just friends with him because he met him when he was doing some intelligence work during World War II?
Well, what would you say about someone who is friends with one of the international bankers and yet comes out in RJ67 talking about the international bankers are our enemies? You know, it's that kind of duplicity.
But I mean, Hubbard knew that intelligence agencies were corrupt, but it doesn't mean that he thought that every single one of the people involved with them were bad and that he wouldn't talk to them.
No, and you know, I find myself personally, there's a lot of evidence that Hubbard was a rogue agent and that he even got punished in the ways that mafias punish, like losing his son, for example, in 1976. Because he did go out of the box. I mean, he was trusted, he was independent, but that also makes a person rogue in the sense that they start taking their own group seriously and protecting their group, and they are away for a long time, and they start doing things their way. And I think Hubbard did have a good purpose to perfect a self-help technology, the auditing, things like that. And when you look at that, he worked very hard on that for a long, long time. You can't say that he was just faking that or just doing that as a cover. No, he was actually doing that, but he still had loyalties and ties to certain people high up in British intelligence, according to what's coming out.
Yeah, I think that he went off and did his own thing, and that the agencies were still obviously monitoring him and saw what he was doing and how it was interesting and how it could be used for certain purposes and stuff. And then they probably got infiltrated, and they definitely had some cells operating in Scientology and stuff. I heard about some girl who was, I guess, some sort of like MK Ultra type girl, and she was like talking about her memories, and she's like, "Oh, I have some memories of being at Flag land base in the 70s and stuff," and that they were there pretending like they were like IT guys or something like that. And so they were operating, you know, whatever MK Ultra group of CIA people or whatever went into the church and had a little cell operating. And so that's, so then, you know, maybe they were testing out things on people's minds or something, but if anything goes bad, then it's just some crazy cult or whatever, you know, and you never find out that those people, you know, were actually CIA agents, you know?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you bring up Flag, because my personal experience with Scientology has nothing to do with Flag. I never went there, but I went to LA and I saw some very interesting things. You know, OSA Int, the building in the HGB, which is the closest thing to Int base that you can get. It's
what HGB? What's that? Hubbard Guidance Center. What?
Hubbard, no, actually it's called the Hollywood Guarantee Building, and it's a famous old building that Scientology bought many years ago, 30, 40 years ago, and has been using for international management
And it's in Hollywood.
below the echelon of Int base. But back to Flag. I have.
And sorry, hold on. Wait, Int base is that in Hemet?
Hemet, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
In the desert. Yeah.
Yeah.
So back to Flag. Flag is kind of scary. There's a German documentary filmmaker, and I'm sorry his name eludes me at the moment, but he's made some pretty interesting films investigating mostly German Scientologists who went to Flag and then they died for one reason or another, either at Flag or when they got back home from Germany. And Flag is a very creepy place. He documented one case where this girl had marks of electroshock on her skull, and that was very creepy. Flag is a place where there are a lot of retired CIA agents, and that have been known to brag about how easy it is to get work with OSA or with the church or with security down at Flag, and that they pay good and all that stuff. So I think Flag is a whole different ball game from the rest of Scientology. And OSA Flag has its own interesting status. And this is where Lisa McPherson was killed as well. And they got away with it because of the network that they have there. And there's another mysterious death. Victoria Britton's son, I think Kyle Britton. And it was a pretty, it was made to look like a suicide, and it may have been. It was called a suicide, but there were so many things wrong with it. And the Clearwater police, the way they handled the parents, were definitely appeared to be in the sphere of influence of Scientology, let's say, and they really blocked a lot of the investigation. So it's very creepy, the influence and power that Flag has over the local police, the people that they hire, ex-CIA agents, and some of the things that have been alleged to go on there. I've heard a lot of mind control stuff. Anytime you hear mind control connected with Scientology, it's almost always Flag. And
yeah, like we had the Fishman stuff where he was a problem for the church, and then they like, what's the word, they tried to like mind program him to go and kill himself or something, like to get rid of him as a problem. But they and then they sent him like poison and other stuff. But they actually, they did, they PDH'd him or whatever, or whatever they did. But they full on did reverse auditing on him. They didn't just say, hey, can you, drop your body because you're a problem for us at OSA. Like they actually like tried to program him so that like when he answered the phone call or something and heard the special word, he would go and walk into the ocean or something.
Yeah, this is very heavy stuff, and I apologize. I'm just getting warmed up on this because I really do repress it and suppress it. But Virginia McLaury had a, quote, auto accident there that she was actually lured into traffic. She's described it on one of her articles right after she blew the whistle on the 6 month checks. That's pretty freaky.
Oh, wow, yeah.
It was an attempted murder, and she saw things going on in time to put on the brakes and only get her car pretty much messed up and be shaken up rather than have endured a fatal accident.
What technique did they use to try and assassinate her?
Lure her into traffic. Yeah, they set up some traffic cones and things like that, and had a couple of guys try to wave her through. And a car was coming.
Oh, so they tried to guide her car into another car to have an accident.
Exactly. And before that, she had been gotten reverse auditing at the ethics section in Flag that they were,
What?
and she was told that you're going to get in a car accident if you don't cooperate.
What
Yeah.
reverse auditing did they? What sort of reverse auditing did they do?
Well, a couple that was there at the time actually made a video with more details about the reverse auditing. I've had reverse auditing myself in the Dallas org. And basically what I can tell you is what they do is they'll repeat. Usually, this is one example. I'll give the example that they did on me because it's similar to what they did on the Barnes and what they did on Virginia. And basically they asked me.
Hold on a second. The Barnes is in the Barnes example. So, I'm going off track, but did they want him to punch them or something? They tried to reverse audit him, so he got annoyed. Then he would punch them, and then they could declare him that he's crazy and he punches auditors or something. Or is that right?
Yeah, I take it you heard the story. I think she wanted him to punch her.
And he could sort of tell that in his. Anyway, go on. What you're saying?
So if you know anything about the technology of Scientology as an auditor, you're driving someone out lists, which makes them extremely angry and likely to be violent. So that's what they were trying to do with all of us in the reverse auditing. So I'll give you the example of the one they did to me. Ironically, this was after I was trying to handle my field, the OT7s in my field who were leaving the church as a result of the exposure of this 6 months check. So there is a connection here. So I was given the question, who told you it was not okay? No, who told you that it was okay not to apply the PTSSP tech? Now, if you're a technical auditor, you know that that's a listing question and it has one answer. But they asked me as a repetitive question for literally 2 intensives, which is about 20 to 25 hours of auditing. So I put auditing in quotes because it wasn't really auditing. In fact, she said, I'm not auditing you. But it was, in effect, reverse auditing.
Do you think she wanted you to punch her or something?
She was too pretty. I had a crush on her, and there was no way I was going to punch her, and I wasn't really getting mad. I was just getting kind of exasperated. Like, I didn't even really protest much.
What do you think they were trying to achieve by? Were they trying to get you to go crazy and run away, or like?
Yeah. They wanted to induce a sort of an underlying psychosis, and I'll tell you, if you want to, I'll go ahead and tell you what happened to me.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny to put it this way, but I actually became sort of a clone of David Miscavige. And I'll tell you why, is because that procedure got me looking for SPs, and Scientology is so good, and there's SPs out there, and we got to get the SPs. And it just made me internally, underneath my awareness and my subconscious, I became a very, kind of the David Miscavige beingness, where they talk about him going around and searching for the littlest thing, that outpoint, like a Sea Org member that arrives, anxious to find out who's the SP in your org. And I went down to Costa Rica and I sort of behaved like that. Although I suppressed it, there was this impulse to just, find the SP. And the good thing is the goodness of the being. I didn't want to get the wrong target. I knew I could, if I was a little too tough about this, I could get the wrong target. So I worked very hard to find the right target. So I would burn the midnight oil, stay up late, try to find out who are the people suppressing Scientology in Costa Rica. And I actually found some. And I actually, took my angst out on them on Goldenrod. I couldn't do it through International because I had no comm lines to International. So I had to do it myself. So the only thing you can do locally is you can publish a conditions order. And I these guys were squirreling and they were harming people. And one guy had stolen a wife of another staff member. And so I declared them in a condition of confusion and treason, etc. And I tacked up the declare, and everybody was happy because I got the right people. But it wasn't until I got some auditing, co-auditing a little later, that I realized what the reverse auditing had done to my mind, and I started unraveling it. I just had this amazing cognition, and it just blew. And then I realized I had been being like an RTC David Miscavige type fanatic about Scientology. And from there, it was like, wow, it's like I experienced what reverse auditing does to your mind over a long period of time.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think that if you continually ask to find the SP, that can start making you paranoid. Like maybe that
they were kind of hoping I would go crazy so they could get rid of me, because I was a rogue agent. I was doing things with ARC rather than with the kind of toughness that they wanted. They were basically embarrassed, and they needed a head on a pike. They were embarrassed because an OT3 had died, and she had specifically placed in her for lack of a better word, her will, or her what to do with my memorial service. She specifically invited two groups: her friends from the church and her friends that had left the church. So it created a huge flap. It was embarrassing to the Sea Org, to David Miscavige, that in Dallas there was this memorial service where SPs and Scientologists all showed up. Of course, they both kept to different tables and they didn't speak to each other, but it was too much for management. They needed a head on a pike. And so I had been away at the ship. I was on the Free Winds ironically doing a course so I could be a tougher DSA. I was doing the Perception of Truth course so I could be a better investigator. And I was doing it on my own dime. I was paying for this out of my own money to be a better staff member. And when I got home, I got raked over the coals. Like I said, for a week straight, 2 intensives of reverse auditing, same question over and over and over. And finally, I broke in a way. I didn't break in the sense of, becoming a different person. I sort of took on a tough valence like I told you about, but I was still me and I was still a decent person. But I broke in the sense that when the guy asked me, he asked me at a session because they couldn't get anywhere with me in these 2 intensives. He says, what's wrong with you? What's really happening? I says, well, sir, I guess I'm not applying KSW hard enough. And so I just, took it on myself that I wasn't a fanatic enough. I was already quite fanatic, but I wasn't fanatic enough. So I was going to do lower conditions and become even more fanatic. And that's the product they got. And that's what I had to do to stay on staff. And I knew it deep down inside, that I knew this was really a real injustice, and it was crazy what was going on. But I wasn't ready. I didn't have enough data or friends or connections or, to understand the whole ramifications of what was going on. I was just overwhelmed.
Yeah, wow. So we're going into how you were getting screwed over by the church.
People perspective. This was January of 2002 that I got back from the Free Winds and had this reverse auditing.
Were you getting the auditing on the Free Winds?
No, but the first session started on the Free Winds. The funny thing is, the OTD bug that I did is supposed to detect any out ethics situation or reasonableness. Any of that's supposed to be, and you're supposed to be CS'd by a class 12. So I got through the OTD bug with shining colors, and I graduated the Perception of Truth course in check sheet time, which no one does that because there's so many clay demos on that. That's another story in itself. That was kind of a miracle I pulled off so I could get back to school. I was a school teacher, and I had already wasted a lot of time doing the OTD bug. And despite all that, a telex came through, and it must have come from way up top. And I mean, it could have come all the way up from Miscavige. There's no, because he's been known to get involved with these cycles. And I was ordered to stay on the ship, and that's when she started this reverse process on me. And I did blow up in that session. I didn't throw the cans or threaten her, but I started yelling back at her and saying, I got to get home. This is bull, because I got through the OT debug, and I'm not out ethics. There's no out ethics situations, and this is complete BS, and you shouldn't be holding me on the ship. And they had my passport, of course, and they held me for several more days. So it was, strictly speaking, kidnapping, but of course I was on staff, so I was willingly doing it, quote unquote. So
what were they? I don't get how did they blame it on you? Like, what were you connected to get, to this funeral and all this stuff? Like, I didn't get it.
Well, LRH called it being there and communicating. Basically, I was the DSA, and the field had a flap, and I was supposed to be in charge of the field. And even though I was gone at the time, it never would have happened if I'd have done my job, that kind of a thing. It was like blame the victim kind of thing, which is what a cult does.
Yeah. Okay. So with the well, I'll ask your opinion then. I mean, do you really think that Hubbard was working for an intelligence agency while he was doing Scientology?
Yes, I'll say yes as an answer to the question, but I'll qualify that answer by saying that he was high-ranking. He was very trusted. He was let do what he wanted. I'm not saying he got a telex every day telling him what to do. I'm not saying he's an agent in that sense, but I'm saying he's a cooperative agent, a go-to agent for the CIA or the MI6, because these agencies, what I'm finding out is these agencies all work together. They're above national boundaries, and they are above governments. And so Hubbard was basically in with that crowd and doing his own thing, and he responded. If anyone wants a really good example and thinks that Hubbard would put his OT ability above his loyalty to these agencies, I'll give you a Freedom Magazine article, and I'm sorry I don't have the exact one to hand because this just came to mind, but it's the one where he says, point blank, after the Kennedy assassination, that Lee Harvey Oswald assassinated John F. Kennedy, which, as we know, is a complete lie. Hubbard wrote this in a Freedom Magazine article, and I'm not saying
in what
this,
year?
Around 66, 67, few years after the assassination. And what that is that's the party line. The CIA line is that it's a one gunman operation. And so he backed them up. So there's an example of backing
Yeah, but
up.
he could also be in a situation where he's like, I want to get some brownie points. I don't want to get into any trouble, so I'm gonna make them think that I'm not that switched on to what's going on, and that I'm not trying to radicalize my Scientologists, and I'm just going to say, yeah, Lee Harvey Oswald did it.
That's a pretty good observation, and I wouldn't say that you're too far off. That's exactly what he would have been doing. And so when I say he's a rogue agent, I mean he's doing his own thing, and he knows that they're the bad guys, but he's also has been working with them and for them. And at some point he goes rogue, and at that time he may have done it for just the reasons you said.
Yeah, can I say something? Because this is why it's
in order to show his loyalty and cover the fact that he was going to do his own thing, and he was going to start hitting back at them. That's very possible.
There's a technique of, like, when you actually know what's going on, you don't let people know what you know.
Yeah.
Because you want to appear dumb. It's better that way.
Yeah.
So I'll give.
Although it's a betrayal to us, because he's writing a Freedom Magazine and he's giving us Scientologists inside data, which he often did. And it's a betrayal to us because we think that he's writing 100%.
Yeah, I know.
He always told us.
the reason why this is so deep, and when you see these people like Tony Ortega and the people there they're pretty much skeptics, they just don't know how deep things really are and what's going on. So they'll hear something that Hubbard says and they'll misinterpret it. For example, Hubbard was getting interviewed by some TV thingo, and he said something off camera, right, to them, right? He goes, hey, this is off the record, but I haven't been managing the church for years, right? So maybe some abuses are happening, but it wasn't happening when under my watch. Now that is Hubbard being a fucking smartass, right? Because he wants that message to get out there that he wasn't managing the church for years, because that was the thing he was trying to get out there, the idea. So he thinks, because he's clever, he thinks, how can I get this idea out there? Well, I'll say something like off the record and some little comment about some abuse being in the church, but at the start of it, he prefixes it with, I haven't been managing the church for years, so maybe that's why there are some abuse problems, right? So someone listening to that won't realize that Hubbard thought of that 10 minutes or 10 days before the interview and thought, this is a great thing I can say to them. And then on TV, they'll go, because he knows how these stupid TV programs work. They love to play something that's off the record whenever they're interviewing someone who's a bad guy, that they call a bad guy. They go, listen to what he said behind the scenes. And they show them what the bad guy said. So of course they'll go, that's what they did on the TV show. They go, off the record, this is what Hubbard really said. And they played that little footage. And I was listening to it thinking, smart ass Hubbard, he knew that they were going to record that and use that and everything. But he's really clever. This is why it's why he was a successful intelligence agent when he was in the Navy or whatever, because he thinks on these really deep levels and he's clever and they play games and you have to have a certain skill to do this sort of stuff.
That's a great observation on your part. And yes, I think he was playing dumb, and these guys are falling for it. Although when it comes to someone like Tony Ortega and his connections, you wonder if he doesn't also know that he's running a con on us, that he really believes that Hubbard was that dumb and was that so there's this is why I hate the spook business, because there's intrigue underneath intrigue.
Yeah, there's like, because there's what is it? There's you're an agent, then there's a double agent where you work for both sides, and there's like a triple agent. Like, it gets really confusing, you know what I mean? And that's why I guess the James Bond movies are funny, because it goes into that area. It was written by, a guy who was an intelligence agent, and so he knows how things really work, that one person goes, oh, I'll work for you and then I'll take money and I'll work for the other person. And it just gets totally confusing and messed up. It's like, who was the person?
And then sometimes your boss knows you're a double agent, but doesn't tell you.
Yeah. And
then works that angle, so it just gets
it just gets
like the saying, what a web we weave when we work to deceive, and that's what intelligence is all about. So I'm not when you introduce me as an amateur,
intelligence officer,
kind of a volunteer intelligence officer in the field. Yeah, I keep saying I want out of this because I don't like this kind of thing, but I am highly trained in it, and I do like to expose what's going on, and I feel that's my responsibility. And I think I've done a lot of that already, and that's why I'm really moving in the tech direction. But, I do want to clean up the loose ends, and I want a secure field, and not a field that's, if the stuff that had gone on that I didn't blow the whistle on had been allowed to continue, we would be in a real mess. And I think we still are in a real mess, but I think it would be even worse if I hadn't blown the whistle.
What sort of stuff?
I'm talking about, shepherding people into these groups that are like mini cults, like these ex-churchies that join Karen's Facebook groups. I'm talking about Karen De La Carriere and her Facebook groups. They're closed. They're very security conscious.
Yeah.
And you don't get to talk about certain things. You don't get to talk about Marty you never get to mention the name Virginia McClowry or Scott Gordon or anything like that.
So what is Virginia? What are the McClarys? What do they conclude? Do they think for sure Hubbard was, and Scientology was a whole intelligence op or something?
Pretty much. I've talked to Virginia before about Hubbard being rogue, and she says that could be. You know, she doesn't have any problem with. She knows that Hubbard wanted to do certain things and wanted to do good. She doesn't think of Hubbard as a bad person, but she also knows that Hubbard had a personal button on self-importance, and that these guys he was working with made him feel really big, like he was doing something for the planet, and that ultimately was going to come out good. Because the whole New World Order thing is premised on recruiting good people into Freemasonry and high positions and into the Council of Foreign Relations, that they're ultimately going to turn out with a good, peaceful planet without war. Creepily, like some of the things that Scientology said, a civilization without war, without criminals, things like that. Only the path that they're taking, you and I know, and even Hubbard preached against it, is the one worlder thing, and that's
the police state stuff.
Yes, it's we can't avoid having a one world government without also a police state, in either in the manner of 1984 or Brave New World. Take your pick. It seems like there's a blend of that coming true.
Yeah, the games. Yeah, the game going on Earth is pretty interesting. I mean, there's just so much happening. It's just, yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it occupies all of my attention. I mean,
yeah,
you know, even though I'm not obsessed with Scientology history per se, and I study Scientology all the time, the auditing, I do lots. I'm still a field auditor, but I'm really concerned about the developments of totalitarianism throughout the planet. You know, with the new technologies, I'm very concerned about where that's going.
Well, recently I was thinking of just moving into just working in Scientology and dropping, like, you know, UFO books and conspiracies and all that sort of stuff, because they've absorbed a lot of my time in the past 5 years because they're just so interesting. But then, you know, I'll just listen to something and I'll just be like, oh gosh, that's interesting, and I'll just go off down rabbit holes, and I'll realize that, like, I love it. It's what gets me going, because I guess everyone's interested in different things. I'm just interested in investigating things. It just fascinates me, you know, like locations where they might be building UFOs is pretty cool. And then the weather being manipulated. I mean, it's fascinating. You know, I was watching the Alternative 3 like movie from the 70s. It's just so interesting. But anyway, but what's actually good with me personally is that I've managed to, like, when you study all these things, it's like suddenly you start connecting all the dots and you start seeing the whole picture, and it all comes together. But sort of only at the end does it really sort of happen. At the start, you have so many misunderstoods, and you know, and so for me, I've tied it all together, and it relates to OD8. And I probably don't want to talk about that OD8 truth briefing document, but I actually understand it now. Like, I full on actually understand it, and I reckon it's real. And I think that you still there. Yeah, I think that I actually think that Hubbard was actually talking about stuff that's very similar to what David Icke is talking about. Like the Markabians, I think that when you say Markabians, you could say the bloodlines, or the elite bloodlines that David Icke are talking about. They're basically humans, but they're sort of not human, if you know what I mean. And behind the scenes, they're getting manipulated by reptilians or something that's out of this dimension.
Right. And, you know, what you're talking about, your strong interest in these things and your concern about the planet, you know, we have a strong fourth dynamic. That's all. You know, some people aren't up to that and don't really care. And, you know, their world is much smaller, but you seek to understand these things because in the context, it very much affects where we're going as a human race. You know, what's going to happen to us.
Yeah, and I think that now we're talking about this whole intelligence agent stuff, because you've got reptilians or whatever these bad beings are, they're outside of this thing, and they work through someone else, and then like like once you understand intelligence ops, you can understand the alien issue a lot better, because you understand that like they've got their versions of CIA doing shit here on Earth, and it's all kept secret from us. This is why we're so dumbed down, because there are intelligence agents here on Earth that actually investigating the ET thing and know that ETs are involved with Earth and are trying to change things here secretly. You know, they're abducting people, they're wiping their memory so the person doesn't know they're abducted. Like there's secret stuff going on. So we've got basically aliens, CIAs here doing stuff, you know?
That's very interesting. You know, I don't quite get into the UFO angle as much because it's just too overwhelming. I kind of specialize in what's going on in politics and cultures and governments and things like that. Those interest me, and especially Scientology, because, you know, I really feel after all this time, and I've hung out with anti-Scientologists and I've listened to their viewpoints with concern, because I know what it's like to be kicked out of a church and lose your family. So I have a lot of sympathy for them, but you know, I'm not finding any new answers as far as, well, what solutions do you guys have for personal improvement, recovering your memory, finding out who you really are, knowing yourself as a spiritual being. It comes back to auditing, and it doesn't mean that you have to rejoin the church or that you even have to practice Scientology. But auditing is fascinating to me because it is a means of recovering your past. Even if it's just this lifetime, it's still therapeutic to recover your childhood. And it does it in a way that is, compared to psychology, where they're still telling you what's wrong with you and maybe writing you a prescription and say, you know, your 50 minutes is up. That's it. You know, that's your session. Nobody can tell me that they have better answers. Plenty about how bad Scientology was and how corrupt it was and what kind of crime was in them. You know, I think the Remini show, for that reason, the first season was great, because they exposed a lot of what, you know, this is what goes on in Scientology, especially at the upper levels, you know, when you get involved.
Well, I was watching I was watching the Remini show recently, and like they had some guy, and the show was going with the whole sex thing, because you know how that's in fashion at the moment, the whole naughty sex behavior, like, I don't know, pedophilia or like men abusing women or something. That's the flavor of the month or whatever. So they're doing a whole episode on like that topic or whatever, and they had some guy that was sitting there, and when he was 16, he was like claiming he'd been molested by some other older guy, but the guy who was sitting there was gay himself, and he was 16 years old, and he was rubbing other guys' nipples, and you just listen to him just like, is this serious? Like, I don't view this guy as a victim. Like, sorry, but this makes me really believe in the victim tone level, and he's just trying to go into this tone level to benefit himself, and it's just so stupid. I'm just like, are they serious? Like, you know, it's just like, I mean, it's not an actual instance of someone being there, good, normal person, then someone comes in and abuses him. It's like, this is like, it takes two to tango, you know?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that case, but it sounds, you know, I've known people like that. The thing that really gets me is that they're trotting out sex abuse and they're trotting out trafficking, and really the real issue of the day is United States is #1 in sex trafficking, and foster care is channeling our kids into lives of sexual slavery and sex trafficking. And we're devoting this show to the fringe of a religion that has its idiots, just like every religion does, and not even a percentage of the pedophile priests in the Catholic religion. And we're shining the spotlight on this. And
I know.
I don't want to take away from those victims there that were victimized by pedophiles or sexual abusers. That's not okay at all. Obviously, it's not okay. But when you look at the priorities that Hollywood and our society has and what they're covering, and what's going completely uncovered, it's really maddening, because this is not the issue. The issue is that there is child sex trafficking, going on, and it's rampant in the United States. And Tony Ortega was involved for a while in the Village Voice with facilitating through the back page, and he came very close to getting into legal trouble. His bosses did go to jail, so he was involved in that. So this is the same group that is putting forward these shows, making this our entertainment.
Yeah, it's silly.
Granted, it needs to come out, but
yeah. Well, I mean, because the sex crimes is in fashion at the moment, so they're like, oh, let's do a Scientology video about sex crimes or whatever. And they're trying to invent like a problem and make out that like the Church of Scientology has some sort of problem like the Catholic Church. And it's just like, no, it doesn't. That's just not what, that's not, yeah. I mean, of course there's always pedophiles here and there, but it's just like, that is not a Scientology thing. If anything, it probably has less sex crimes than other groups. Definitely. Like, I mean, it's just not an issue, but, and they find some guy that's just like, was engaging in activity with another guy when he was 16 years old and then claiming that, oh, I'm a victim. And it's just like, you were probably having fun. Like, why were you touching the other guy? Like, it's just so stupid and silly. Also, anyway, but let me ask you about the Troika then. So what's the Troika? Who are they?
Well, Marty originally came up with the idea, the PR Troika, and he was basically blowing the whistle on Leah Remini, Mike Rinder, and Tony Ortega. And I was beginning to uncover these operations in the field. And about a year or two later, I actually, right there, I made a comment on Marty's article there. I said, there's also an intelligence troika, and I named the three right there. But I hadn't composed my article yet. And that sat there for a year or two. And then I think it was 2018, maybe 2017, I came out with my article that is called The Intelligence Troika. And that's the only person in common to the two troikas is Tony Ortega. He's both a PR and he's an intelligence agent, and in my opinion. And that's on the CIA Mockingbird reporter program, because I caught him gaslighting a whistleblower from MK Ultra. Her name is Sue Ford, and she wrote under the name Bryce Taylor. And her book is called Thanks for the Memories. And Tony Ortega trashed her, said she was delusional, and all these things that they're calling me now on Facebook. They called her in Tony's article. So that was my basis for pointing the finger at Tony Ortega. Now the other two.
But hold on a second. I wouldn't call Tony an agent though for that. He's just a dumbass skeptic. He's just a stubborn, fixed idea dumbass skeptic.
No, reporter does not write an article trashing the reputation of a whistleblower unless they have good evidence that she was, and he didn't. He was basically raking her through the mud and calling her names, didn't have any substantial evidence against her, just said she was imagining things. Her husband's worried about her because she's delusional.
Yeah, well, here's where things get interesting, right? I remember meeting this guy who was gay and he was low toned, and he had this sort of obsession with trashing on the chemtrail stuff, like, picking on chemtrail people and making fun of it. And he would make fun of Scientologists and other unusual things as well. But like he would spend a lot of time on the chemtrail thing. And then when I found out he would do stuff like he would hack Facebook groups and try and shut them down, I was just like, whoa, this guy's like agent level. Like, is he an agent? Right. And I was just thinking, well, yeah, he could be getting paid to do this stuff, but what if he's been implanted to do this stuff? Like, we hear about how like MK Ultra people and stuff getting abducted, but like, what if instead of them having paid agents to do these things, paid trolls, what if they're actually abducting people and mind programming them or whatever, so that then they don't have to pay them and they just let them off, and then the person after that's just crazy anti-chemtrail guy, and he just hacks people's pages and he shuts them down, and he's doing it for free. Like, what if like Tony Ortega is one of these people?
Well, what if he's both? Because a lot of agents, especially lower level agents, are victims of mind control.
Yeah, that's what interesting. Yeah, because what if he does sign up for it and does actually accept some sort of payment to do certain things, but then they go, well, let's use this guy, you know what I mean? And then they take him and they tinker with him, and then the person's got this obsession with chemtrails and thinking it's ridiculous and trying to attack them.
Yeah, and if I think of his name, I'll tell you, but I just listened to a very good interview of a long-term CIA agent, deep cover agent, who actually unknowingly flew cocaine from Nicaragua and then found some and said, telephoned Oliver North and said, what is this, we got going here, because he didn't want to smuggle cocaine. He was a good guy. Anyway, he talks about how, it's easy to say that it's all CIA mind control or MK Ultra mind control. And he says, I've been in the field and I've managed agents. And he says, it's unbelievably easy to get people to do things for money, for sex, for various purposes. And you don't have to do any mind control. That is the mind control. That's all the mind control you need. And especially if someone gets caught up into something where they sign a contract and they know that they're toast if they blow the whistle or they go rogue, then they're going to toe the line. And the best that they can do is kind of like say, hey, boss, I don't want to do this anymore. And they said, all right, you go your way, but you better shut up because you know what'll happen. That's the kind of thing that happens. So I don't know if Tony Ortega is active at the moment, because I have the feeling, and it's just an intuition, that in the last year or two, the guys who have been running this controlled opposition from the very top have kind of turned their back on Scientology and said, okay, we'll keep raking in some of the money from the Leah Remini show and from David Miscavige's slush fund accounts from IAS. Other than that, we don't care what happens with it. I think I got the distinct impression that they changed their strategy, that they just thought it was too much to focus on trying to get something out of it. Because I think at one time, Scientology was on their agenda for a possible New World Order religion that would actually, when you look at the way they got the levels that they came to, that, the guys come out on Leah Remini and talked about how people behave at international base and how people behave in the Sea Org. You realize that, you could have people working really hard for almost nothing across the boards and thinking that they're saving the planet. It's like a perfect religion for them. And maybe Hubbard made it so that they couldn't do that. Maybe Hubbard stabbed them in the back. I don't know. I think Hubbard was, had a good side and a bad side, both. He talks about in one of his early issues how there's no such thing as a gray hat. You're either a white hat or a black hat. And yet, when I look at Hubbard, he's one of the grayest hats I've ever seen. And it's so much
really
fine. How can you have such a good man and such a bad man in the same package?
Really? No, I think he was a good hat. I think it was one of the white hats.
Well, my opinion is he was a gray hat. He did some pretty bad things, but
like what?
And the one thing that I take from Hubbard that I really appreciate most about him besides Axiom 1, which started, Scientology out, which I don't know if it was his or not, but his thing that he pushed was that man is basically good. And I've, the way I see it, any being is basically good. And I think that the fact that he pushed that so hard and he had that as one of his central tenets means that he was a basically good person. All I'm saying is he did some pretty bad things. And when you go back to 1962 South Africa or earlier, 60, 61, 62, the stuff that's been uncovered, some of it came out in Virginia's article, but some of it was already out on the, I think, Chris Owen and Tony Ortega, about the racism, the apartheid that he was involved in with these guys when he went to Rhodesia. It's coming out, and it's really nothing that we can defend. How do you defend that?
No, I think the problem is interpreting the data. See, somebody can interpret it as being a bad thing that he was doing, and other people can look into it and go, well, maybe that was good. Like, I think that he wasn't like a fruit salesman and just living a simple life that's easy to interpret. Because if you look at the history of a fruit salesman, you can go, well, he sold fruit. It was good. Hubbard was doing really unusual stuff, and he was doing intelligence ops, and he used clever ways to get about achieving things. So in order to understand what he was actually achieving, it's hard to find out what the effect is of what he was doing. It's like, let's say, I know this didn't happen. Let's say Hubbard ran across the street naked, right? You could see that and go, that's crazy. He ran across the street naked. But then you have to understand that Hubbard's a bit clever, right? We can't look at it on a superficial value. We have to look behind that and go, well, why did he run across the street naked? What effect did that have? And then you find out that, I don't know, it saved like a baby or something. And then you're like, oh, he's good. So he's hard to interpret, you know what I mean? And Trump's the same, I think, as well. Trump's a similar sort of person where he does things where you have to look deep in order to see the actual effect of what he's doing. You can't take it at face value.
Well, he was a man who believed the ends justify the means, and that the ends were so good. And I can't argue with the ends being awesome. A world without war, without insanity, without criminality, helping each other with auditing. Auditing sessions are awesome. When they're done right, when they're done with a compassionate, caring person, you really get far in your personal growth. And so I've got to hand it to him. He did some awesome things. Now, everyone's going to have different opinions as to whether it was justified, the things that he did to get there. I may have a different opinion. I have personally suffered some of the policies that Hubbard had, such as disconnection and things like that. So I do admit that I have that angle, and I'm also one of those persons, though, that I'm not going to go throw away the baby with the bathwater. I'm going to go, there are some good things that I got out of this, even though I think it was a cult, and I think that I was duped, and I think I was used, and I gave 16 years of my life, so I have the right to, not be completely happy about all of it. But also I do appreciate the good things about it, the things that I did learn from it. And also, the auditing, I've pretty much dedicated my life to continuing auditing in an independent fashion. Yeah.
So with this, so with this implant thing, because you could use the Scientology word implant, or you could say the guy's been mind programmed by the CIA. It's essentially the same thing. The person's been tinkered with, right?
Yeah.
I think it's possible that Tony Ortega could be, and unknowingly have been tinkered with, like implanted to do what he's doing.
Well, when you look into his background, he has these missing years in his resume. What was he doing in his late 20s, early 30s? That's just completely missing. And you go, well, that's pretty common for an agent, to have been on doing God knows what for all these years and nothing to show for it. Basically, he was on assignment. And I don't know where or whether it's even significant. He might have been filing papers down in South America. Who knows? But I think, in my opinion, he doesn't have a very good, believable resume and background for what he turned up doing. He turns up working for the Village Voice, which was one of the most influential papers in New York City. That's, and the Mockingbird is 50% involved with 50% of media, and that was a big media target. So I'm not at all surprised to see him assigned to the Village Voice. And then
you're talking about Project Mockingbird? Project
Mockingbird, if you look it up on, I think you could even look it up on Wiki, which is controlled by the CIA, but they still have accurate definitions sometimes. And they talk about how Mockingbird is an admitted project of the CIA to infiltrate and control the U.S. media, and that they figure themselves that they got a 50% success rate. In other words, 50% of what we heard in the 70s and 80s, and that was way back then.
Yeah.
You can only imagine what it is now.
Yeah, now
that
it's
the ownership
massive.
is down to 6 major corporations in the entire planet control all of the media. So, in those days, they had 50% control of the message in media.
Yeah, it's all government controlled. I mean, you can just see social engineering. Once you know how to spot the social engineering, you just see it in so many places. So have you heard of the Montauk Underground base? Have you heard the stories about Montauk?
Yes, I have, and I've read a lot about the Montauk super soldiers who were mind controlled and highly trained assassins, black ops, and that all came out of Montauk. There was talk about a lot of kidnapping of young men into that.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because in the
things like that.
In the stories with that, it's like, they were abducting guys and mind programming them, and it just wouldn't surprise me if there are people out there who are abducted and being mind programmed to fight chemtrails, or maybe to fight Scientology, or maybe to fight religions in general. Like, there could be a lot of people's minds could have been messed with a lot, and you see them being some passionate activist, and you're like, why do they care so much? They could have had their minds messed with. Something that happened in Melbourne that was really interesting is a year ago there was this murder that happened, right? And fascinatingly, the murder was done by a guy who was at some of these activist thingos. He was like a protester. He was like a lefty protester. And so it was really strange that, a Greens lefty protester or whatever would suddenly then go out and murder someone. Like, it was just like, I was always suspicious that some of these rabid protesters, because we've got a lot of them in Melbourne, there's a huge amount of lefties in Melbourne, and they protest heaps. They were so passionate, and they're scary. If you ever get near them, like they're like, whoa, they're like and they're chanting like they're really, irrationally crazy, right? And I just thought, man, I bet you these people have been messed with. Some of the ringleaders have been messed with, and then one of them ends up murdering someone. And I've been investigating the murder, and it seems like the murder is a false flag. And I thought, well, that seems really interesting. You know what I mean? Because the guy was already an agent. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you're down there in Melbourne, right? Australia? Yeah. Melbourne is a very major MK Ultra site, and a site of satanic ritual abuse and upper level Jesuit and Freemasonry activity, all of it together. And it's like another Hollywood almost. And,
funny you say that, because I went to Hollywood recently and I thought, this is like a big version of Melbourne. This is like Melbourne if it was charged up on steroids, but it was interesting. I could see the similarities, and Hollywood was scary. But anyway, go on.
Both areas are built on mind control, and they've been doing this a long time. In the old days or even ancient times, it was called satanic ritual abuse, and the CIA codified it into a programming that they could do with laptop computers and electroshock and get the same sort of product, which was, before that, it was sort of crude pain drug hypnosis. And it got pretty sophisticated. And a lot of these, what you're calling sleeper agents, are child abductees or ripped out of the foster care programs.
Yeah,
or
they're in government housing and stuff. And I think, anyway, I knew someone who was who seemed to be microchipped, and he was having UFOs visit him, but like, I think it could have been government stuff. They were just abducting him to experiment on him and stuff. But I think he was from, the bad background and the poor part of town, because they go in, this whole Montauk Boys idea, they go in and they find these people who are perfect to do experiments on and to mind program, and then they do whatever they do, and then 10 years later or whatever, the guys on the streets of Melbourne protesting like crazy, like a climate protester, like, and they're like screaming and stuff. And like, you might have some guy like Nigel Farage, the right-wing guy, rock up, and, like, they just go freaking crazy. And you're just like, you have to be around them and experience the energy. And you're like, wow, these people are like really freaking hyper. Like, there's something gone wrong. It's like, it's not just they're just like yelling and protesting. They like really are gone crazy. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, and if you know your Dianetics, there are what we call restimulators, and what they call in psychology, they call these triggers. And so there's triggers for their programs, or we would call them valences, and they're swung into some radical protester type valence that goes crazy and goes nuts. And they have some kind of trigger, just like from the movie Manchurian Candidate kind of thing, whether it's a card or a phrase, or somebody gives them a call, or they say, whenever you see a protest, run out into the protest and disrupt it.
There'll be amongst some of these crazy protests and stuff, there will be handlers in there. You know what I mean? They'll be doing some things and guiding some things. And anyway,
that's a good observation. That's probably how they do it. Yeah.
Anyway, so there's all this stuff going on that's just crazy, and it's just off the rails. So it's so hard to find out the truth and know what's going on. But anyway, what were you saying? You're talking about Melbourne, I think.
Well, I was just talking about some of the centers that have been notorious for, the whistleblowers who've come forth. And I think the latest is Fiona Barnett, and she's from the Melbourne area, and she was abused from early childhood in that area. And so she was shuttled back and forth from Hollywood to Melbourne, to New York City, some of the big centers of child abduction, sex trafficking, things like that.
Yeah, they're probably
Melbourne was a big center, and the Catholic Church and the Jesuits were definitely involved.
Yeah, they're probably locations where they've got the judges bought out, and they've got a little network going on, and they're conducive for these sorts of things. But it's interesting you go on to this, because when I went to Hollywood and LA, I mean, it just mentally it had an effect on me, and it was just like, it's just got energy, and it's just like weird stuff happens, and then you see all these nutters walking around the streets, and you're like, whoa, like it's just weird. It's a crazy place.
Yeah.
So you reckon Karen De La Carriere, do you think she might be working for the CIA?
No, it's way above that. She's way.
Oh, hold on a second. That's a big statement. No. So, all right, let's go down that road.
It's on her own resume, Andy, and you can go to her LinkedIn page, and she talks about how she has a top secret clearance, has worked in black operations, and she works for the Defense Department, which the Department of Defense Intelligence is a cut above the CIA. They've worked hand in hand, of course, but basically it's on the hierarchy or the pyramid, she's a cut above a CIA officer. And she's been in it since before Scientology. She was basically sleeping with diplomats. So she was actually a MI6 operative at first in Britain, and then she joined Scientology, got on the Apollo ship, and Hubbard personally sent her a letter asking her to join the Sea Org. I'm convinced that Hubbard knew she was who she was. So this was not a hostile infiltration like some of the conspiracy theorists. And I know I'm one to call one, right? So anyway, there are these conspiracy theories out there amongst Max and the Ron Zorg and these other guys, Randy McDonald, talking about Hubbard was replaced in '72, and that all agents are hostile. And the fact is that it's the other way around. There were a lot of agents in Scientology to help make it go, and Karen was one of them. So Karen was a good hat. I mean, to this day, I think she's probably a good auditor, and I have not. I know people who've audited with her, and I have no problem with it. So I don't cut across that at all. But I have blown the whistle on who she actually is, and the way she behaves herself in the social community. She is like the mother hen, social manipulator of groups. Ex-Scientologist message board was controlled and paid by her for a long time, and that was admitted by Michelle Sterling. And then Michelle appears to have turned against her, but then we don't know if it was an op or not, because she couldn't stop trashing the McLowrys. And to me, that's enough. McLowrys have never done anything personally to anyone in the field ever. And they blew the whistle on the 6 months check. So when I see people attacking the McLowrys like they're vicious enemies, I know that they're up to no good. And
yeah, it's kind of strange.
I used to be reasonable about that and say, well, maybe they just don't like her articles or the way she writes, or maybe she said something bad in an email. But after knowing what I know and seeing all that I've seen, and that's why in my Troika article, I have a little subheading at the end of my article listing names of everyone who's trashed the McLowrys publicly, just so you can see who the people are that are caught up in this crap. And it is crap, and I don't know why they did what they did. I'm not saying they're all CIA agents or anything like that, but they're dupes, they're haters, and they have blocked the truth coming out for many years, and they've been part of that, and I call them out on it. And no one's tried to sue me or take me down because they're afraid I'm just going to put more on there, because I have more on there. And that's not a threat. It's just basically, I'm sick of not having the truth told in this field, and I'm outing the people who have been attacking them unfairly and making their life miserable, because basically they can't go into any group and have a decent social discussion with anyone without getting trashed within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. You can tell that there's trolls there to bring them down when they're getting picked on like that. Well, why would Karen, or why would the Defense Department or whatever, why are they trying to bring down Scientology?
I'm not even saying they're trying to bring it down. What I'm saying is she appears to be, because they have these changes in strategy. Well, let's see what we can do with Scientology now, because it's like it's going downhill. It's like, so they did a controlled opposition, and I think they were trying to pave the way for a Leah Remedy show to come up. I can only speculate on why they do what they do, but Karen has infiltrated the anti-Scientology movement, and has been trashing the independent field and other. She's been supporting ESMB, and she's been basically keeping the truth from coming out, because she's been the number one leader against the McLowrys, basically. And that's where I first found out what I was involved in, because when I was in her group, I just brought up the McLowrys article, and I just got jumped on from all sides.
What was their article about?
I had just, I think, featured Mike's work, his book, some of his articles on Hubbard as an intelligence agent, his early career, his U.S. Naval intelligence career. And I had just put some links on there, and Tony Ortega, Jeffrey Augustine, the Troika, and Karen all jumped on me there. And I screenshotted. Okay, are we back?
Yep. You can hear me? All good?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my Australian government internet. It's just crazy.
No.
I'm getting a new company that have modems that's got a backup in them, because the government messing around with the internet stuffed it up so much that they have to build modems that are wireless, that have a backup in them for how often the government internet cuts out or whatever. You just go straight to the wireless version. So I'm going to get that in the next few days. But anyway.
Okay. Well, we're back.
Yeah. So, you talk about Karen and stuff, and I don't know. It may, like, what if she actually is doing good? Like, I mean, actually, I don't even want to entertain the idea. I can tell she's upset about her son or whatever. It seems legitimate when she talks about it, and she hates Scientology.
Well, yeah, that's the, in a way, I hate the cult too, but, like I said, she's still auditing. I'm still auditing openly. She's still auditing covertly. So it's okay with me. I don't have any problem with her auditing. I have a problem with not being transparent and upfront. And as we know, that was the condition of the church and the cult. And that's why people resent it so much, because they were lied to in many ways. But at the same time, we met a lot of friends in there. We met people of like mind, people who were interested in Hubbard's writings, and it struck a chord with them, and believe in past lives and the whole track, and want to help people with auditing. And I'm all on board with that. And I'm not a mind-controlled zombie anymore. I've gotten rid of, so many vestiges of cult thinking and things like that. And you couldn't convince me into a cult, for anything. I'm a very independent thinker now. But as far as Karen goes, I don't hate her at all. And I really hope that she comes clean and maybe at least writes her life story, because it's got to be fascinating, and all the things that she's done. Some of it's on her resume, like I said, just go to what is that? LinkedIn, where you have your resumes and your employability things and your past work. It's fascinating. She's definitely been involved in some top level, and her husband too. Jeffrey Augustine has a top level security clearance. He worked for, he's a top level Freemason, and he also worked for defense contractors. So he knows the business, and he was in Scientology a bit, although he doesn't ever say when he was in, where he was in, what he did. He does admit, in his interviews sometimes that he did a little bit of it, but you never get the whole. There's nothing transparent about these people at all. They're just running these covert ops.
Well, I don't even know if I remember with Jeffrey hearing that he got like a estimate or whatever, and it was going to cost him like 10 grand back then in the 80s or whatever for some life improvement. And he was just like, that's way too much. It's ridiculous, and left. Well, I think that's what he said, but so I don't even know if he did anything.
My impression was that he did he might have even done some of the upper levels, but
Really?
That's just my impression. He does know the upper levels. He talks about them when he talks to John Atack in the interview, and he even talks about black knots and how it works. And apparently the top level Freemasons also learn how black knots works, how you send a body thetan, a spell wrapped up in a body thetan to it. He says it right openly in the interview with John Atack. So it's not like he's doesn't know what goes on in the upper levels, and he's married to a class 12. I mean, certainly if he didn't do much in the church, he has been briefed and possibly audited by his wife. So he does know the tech.
Yeah, it does interest me, like where the source of the attacks are coming from, and I think it's sort of interesting, like the Justin Craig, the 2.0 stuff. It's kind of interesting. The whole, it's like who's running that, who's setting that up, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I don't perceive that that's even connected. It could be another intelligence op, but it may have. It seems to have different handlers, a different interest group. If it is indeed a group, he might even be who he says he is, because he's pretty sharp as far as technical Scientologist, and that's pretty amazing how far he came, and that's how he either fooled or duped or, has people, believing in him and his abilities. And there's something to his abilities. So I'm not saying he's not, he's a complete imposter.
What abilities are you talking about?
Well, his ability to think with the technology, to audit. People have reported having good sessions with him. So it's not like he's a complete imposter, is what I'm trying to say. I don't want to offer an opinion one way or the other, but it is a very interesting operation, and it's very possible that he has had some outside help in terms of putting together the material that came out in his book and the famous infinity technique. That is pretty clever. Either I got to hand it to him, he put that together, or some kind of think tank put it together that had studied some LRH tech.
What's interesting about it, I would love to, because I haven't read any of the stuff. That was odd. Something just popped up on my screen. I was like, what the hell?
Okay.
I haven't read any of his stuff. Makes me wonder if anyone's doing anything to move stuff around or whatever. That was just funny. Yeah, I haven't read any of his stuff, but well, look, I'm the sort of person where, I think that anyway, just tell me what does it say? What does it do?
Well, basically, Ralph Hilton was a big help on this one. He basically spotted that the first step of the infinity procedure had been borrowed from expanded Dianetics, and basically the once handled rundown, which is also called the Sanderson rundown, and basically says to the person, tell me what you want to handle, and then you go from there. And in his case, he turned it into a solo auditing action for somebody who had been stuck on knots, the upper levels of Scientology, and had been doing solo. And they can now work on their own case and do what they wanted for a while. And when you've been doing CSs that everyone's been telling you to do, and you've never got to do what you wanted to do, it's like low-hanging fruit. It's an awesome session for a while, or it's an awesome rundown to do that. Because I know, but I've done it myself. I've done my own solo auditing. So it's not new to me. It's an awesome action to do. And a lot of church Scientologists will get a lot out of doing something like that. So it was very clever how that was arranged, because that's exactly what church OTs respond to. And you can see a lot of church OTs singing the praises of this, saying this worked very well for me. And I can see why it would.
Did you hear? I heard someone got a heart attack or something.
I didn't hear any about that. That's interesting.
I don't know if it was from Infinity Procedure, but some 2.0 thing. Yeah, but anyway. So Yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you think he's actually LRH?
Like I said, I don't want to offer one way or another because I have to admit, I'm, the truth is I am undecided. There are some uncanny resemblances. Either he really got into it and dug into it and just picked up on the personal quirks and things of LRH and then imitated them, or they're coming out because that's what he was. So in a sense, like we talked about earlier in the interview, we all have different opinions of how bad Hubbard was, or how much of a criminal he was and what kind of crimes he did as an intelligence officer, or even while he was running Scientology in the Guardian's office. And so it's in that regard, and even Pat said that it's plausible that the original Hubbard had some evil intentions and did some bad things. So why not this one? So in that sense, it makes sense. But I also am completely sympathetic with the people who are just, why does this guy pretend to have the same name and make issues under the name L. Ron Hubbard? It's injecting, if nothing else, it's injecting confusion into the field. And he could easily have kept his name and said, well, I was L. Ron Hubbard before, but now I'm Justin Craig. That would have been a little more honest and a little more easy for us to handle. So it's causing quite a stir. I try not to add to the stir, by and I don't have anything personally against the guy, but I think if the guy was a criminal, those things should be known, which is the same rationale as I used to write the Intelligence Troika article. I want to know who is doing what and why, and otherwise stay away, please. We're trying to regroup here after losing, an entire spiritual practice, and we're trying to get it going again. And things like this aren't really helping, whether it be Tony Ortega's articles or Karen's manipulation of groups, or Jeffrey Augustine having stock accounts on different ESMB in different places and just sowing confusion. This is what one of the CIA's biggest operations is called Operation Chaos. And there are two things. The Jewish merchants love it because people buy things when they're chaotic and confused. And the CIA loves it because they can control the masses easily when they're in chaos, and they're bringing order out of chaos, which is a Freemason model at the back of our dollar bill. Ordum ab something. It means that thing in the, I think it's on the pyramid at the back of the dollar bill, means order out of chaos. And that's...
let's say with the UFO thingos and stuff, they go in and they create something like the Corey Good guy, and then people argue and debate, and it causes people having breakups, and so it just causes confusion and problems. So it's a success, you know what I mean? And so I could see how other people could have created the 2.0 operation and got people arguing and not uniting and causing confusion, and it's a success, and so some people might get wins from some thing created or whatever, but who cares about that? I mean, the whole point of it is just to cause confusion amongst the free zone and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and that's something we don't need at this time. What we need to do is recover Scientology without all of the cult aspects or the policies that were destructive and hurtful to families, things like that. And if we can come out with something that just audits each other, with all the technology available, and people do this on a free will basis, and there's no coercion, there's no cult, and there's no con artistry, then we could actually do some good for people and help each other. And that's my vision. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that's why I blow the whistle on these characters that are going the opposite direction and just making more pain, confusion, chaos. And I've seen people suffer because they've been destroyed by black PR campaigns outside the church, you know, and I try not to feed into those, especially if there's no visible truth in them. I mean, Jonathan Burke got attacked over these things, and then you find out that he has a side of the story, and that they're not letting him tell his side of the story, and that you know, so it's just that kind of thing. I frown on it, really, you know, because it's not doing any good. You know, those things need to be resolved, and I trust that, you know, he can work those out. But for people to third party and to take things public like Quitla did for a while and just make it a public spectacle, it didn't bring any resolution. It didn't do any good. And let's look at these other guys in the Troika, Tony Ortega, Jeffrey Augustine. They do some great interviews, and that's a service to the Scientology community, to the history, to what happened. Some of their articles, their information, their interviews have been valuable. But then they've got all this nasty stuff going on, and their adherents are involved in sock accounts and fake accounts, and they won't show their real face, and they're just trashing Scientology, you know. And then you find out they were never in it, and that's just maddening when you see all this crap going on. And I just got sick of it, and so I decided I was going to blow the whistle on the people that are condoning it and could do something about it if they wanted, but are sitting there doing nothing and pretending to be leading the field.
Do you what about some of the OSA trolls that are out there, like on Facebook and some of the groups? Like, which ones? Who do you think are OSA trolls?
Well, I really don't like to go there because I'm not even sure OSA is active, and I'm not saying that to protect or defend OSA, because I know OSA is definitely interested in creating that effect, and I'm not saying they're good people. I knew good people in OSA, and I also knew people I didn't want to have anything to do with, and I wouldn't want to see outside of the church or in the church. So as far as, I don't know. I know there's a lot of trolling and a lot of trolls. In present time, in the last, say, few years that we've been talking, there have been disruptive people and there have been trolls, but I don't know of anything that I could point to and say, oh, that's OSA. It's OSA type activity, but
Yeah, you don't know. Yeah, you don't know.
I don't like to label people without evidence, you know.
You don't know where it's coming from, and it's also hard because it's like, well, if it's Defense Department or CIA or whatever, they would be maybe working through OSA. So because of this whole, you know, putting on a mask and hiding who you really are, it just makes it so hard. But it's interesting. Makes the game pretty out there.
Well, yeah, and I've always said that, you know, OSA doesn't even know, and I didn't know when I was in OSA, that there are government operations that assist David Miscavige, but outside the church. And like that operation in Clearwater where the arranged car crash, do I think those were OSA staff? I really don't think so. I'm not saying it's outside the possibility. One or two of them were, but I believe that they were another type of group that's arranged to back up Scientology, and more evidence that the government has a deep interest in it. So I'm not sure, you know, because I knew a lot of these people that staffed OSA, even in OSA Flag. I talked to them on the phone. I met some of them in person when they came out on mission. They were really good people to me, you know, as a group, as a team. And then I find out, well, you know, Debbie Cook had to sign papers with this gal. And did that gal change that much? Did she become that evil? You know, she wasn't evil with me. In fact, I can remember, and I'll think of her name, but she's the security chief, Osa Flag, and she made Debbie Cook, she chased Debbie Cook down and brought her back to the base and made her sign all these non-disclosure papers. And then Debbie left for many years, and then she finally started blowing the whistle. And her name came up, and it's like, wow, that's not the behavior she was called out on. That wasn't the person that I knew, because she would actually had told me we don't break up families, and she had helped me not to break up a family, to arrange, a person to just go off lines instead of getting declared. So this is a person that really helped me do Scientology without the nasty fair gaming. And yet she's accused of fair gaming. So I know she is at a higher level, and she was under pressures, and she probably became what she didn't want to become. She stayed in a lot longer than I did, but I remember her being very helpful.
Now, what are the McClearys doing with themselves these days?
Well, I talk to her on the phone occasionally, so we are in touch. They're in a safe place, and that's all I can say. They.
What are they investigating?
Sorry?
What are they investigating these days?
Well, Virginia's latest article came out on Africa and the South Africa years. The same time period where, I think you've played a video of Hubbard walking across a bridge with a girl.
Yep.
Yeah, that comes from the same time period when he was going to Rhodesia in 1966, I think. But then there was another time that he went to South Africa and was involved with some operations that British intelligence wanted done for South Africa that was actually kind of protecting apartheid. And Virginia was clarifying some of the stuff that had already come out, Chris Owens' material on Tony Ortega, but she took it further and she found more documentation, and she really explains what really happened at that time period and what Hubbard was down there doing. And this is, interestingly enough, this is also one of the hottest times of Scientology tech research, 1960, when he was living in St. Hill and going down and giving the lectures in South Africa. And this is the time of the help, and all the processes were being developed that became the grades. So it's one of the hottest times of Scientology research. And yet Hubbard's also down there doing an intelligence operation. So there's no question he was a incredibly able being in terms of, what Scientologists think of him. But I don't know what they're going to think of him when they find out how involved he was with the apartheid and the regime down there that later got exposed as a very fascist regime and racist regime.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, like once you start studying the data evaluators course and stuff, you start questioning just everything, and you definitely are. You're less trusting, I guess, and you're not as brainwashable, I guess. You're not as passionate, I think.
That's very true. And the data series is great. I mean, I used the data series on my post. I studied it. I was fascinated with it. I never got to do the course, and I always wanted to. But then I went to the free ones, and I mentioned earlier, I did the Perception of Truth course, which is all the logics in Clay. And that's the precursor to the data series. So I really have a firm grounding in logic in the data series. And that's helped me a great deal in evaluating data, because that's what it's all about. Intelligence, white intelligence work, the intelligence for the good guys, white hat intelligence is all about evaluating data so that you can predict situations and not get involved in things you don't want to be involved in. And it's very, very great defensive tool. And someone who studied the data series is most of the way there. I mean, that's what intelligence is based on, data series evaluation.
Yeah, but it definitely changes a lot of things. It's, I don't know, it's just like you're not able to be as, like, you can't be as guided as much. You're a bit too like you think for yourself and stuff like that. And I don't know, I just feel like ignorance you can create, like a Tom Cruise in 2004. You know what I mean? I'm not saying what he did was wrong. I mean, it was really good, I think. And I think he helped promote and get Scientology out there. But the way how he is in that thing, that gung-ho-ness, that blah, 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 when you really advance yourself spiritually and advance yourself in how much knowledge you know, I don't think it creates a being like that. I think a being like that is a being that's interested in survival, because he doesn't know as much that he just survives, and he doesn't know that maybe his thoughts can just create reality and stuff. And I don't know, it's just interesting, like especially with the Mandela effect and funky stuff that goes on with that. It's just like you just end up being like, oh, this place is interesting. I mean, like, for example, right, I know that there are some aliens that are abducting people, unleashing their DNA and making these indigo children and that sort of stuff that just have these advanced abilities that that are bringing about a worldwide revolution, right? Now, how can you desperately want to set up a church or desperately want to get people up the bridge when you know there are some thingos from another dimension that are bringing about a mass awakening? Like, you're just like, well, they're bringing about a mass awakening. That's pretty cool. So I don't know if I'm going to be desperately trying to, recruit that person or whatever.
Interesting. Wow.
I don't know. I think it's just when it comes to knowledge and spirituality and that, it's like you take a wog and you can give him data and you can make him into like this, like, good Tom Cruise. But then if you really keep on giving a person data and you give them the data evaluators course and lots of knowledge, they then go off into just funky land. They go off into like, I don't know. But as in, anyway, like if I had a church or whatever and I wanted to set up a church and have Sea Org members, I wouldn't want all my Sea Org members to really be OT and to really have lots of knowledge and to really be skeptical and to be super intelligent. You need some people who are just workhorses.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's how they think. Yeah. I mean, if you're really going to
look at you, for example, though. Like, as in, if you took a lot of like, let's say the Sea Org was good, right, and it didn't get affected by the government or whatever. If you took all the Sea Org, I don't know. I just feel like if you took all the Sea Org and you really unleashed them and made them sort of more the way you are and the way you're thinking, they're too rebellious. You're making rebels. Like, when you really set a Thetan free, they're just too rebellious.
Well, what my question would be, what's wrong with that? Because, and that's kind of what we need to do in the independent field. We need to become very able, even maverick leaders, and not be afraid to bring people up to that level, because people like that cannot be governed, and government is the problem. Government is a substitute for missing parents. Government is a solution for not being able to manage your own affairs and create your own organizations and get along, and obviously I'm talking about a society of clears, right? Because, I mean, at least from the standpoint of a Scientologist, I don't really believe everybody needs to be clear, but we need a lot of powerful, independent thinking individuals with that ability, so that we can have volunteer organizations. As it stands right now, government is not a volunteer organization. You can't opt out of government. You can't opt out of being a subject of a government. And they have a monopoly of force. And Hubbard, in the early days, Hubbard basically said what I just said. And Scientology was there to liberate and set people free and harness the abilities that people had and make them better, make the able more able was the phrase. And I don't find too much wrong with the phrase, except for I think the unable should be made able as well. So that makes me a rebel, So, but I get
No,
what
but,
you're saying.
no, but you see what I mean? Like, as in, like you question what LRH says. You're saying that there's a bad side to him and stuff, and it's just like, I mean, from a organization point of view, I could see how someone would be like, Scott, just leave because you're a bit difficult. Like, I could see someone saying that,
Yeah.
Like it's like basically, would the world still function if everyone was acting like OTs, or do you need some people who are just like simple, that just build the houses and do the simple stuff? I don't know.
Well, there are people that want to do that. And, if they're treated fairly and paid well, they will do that happily. And then the people who aspire to lead or manage or things like that will do that. And if everyone's consciousness is high enough and everyone can grant everyone else beingness, nobody lords it over anyone else, and we don't have an authoritarian structure, and we have instead a voluntary cooperative society. And by the way, I want to point out that if I acknowledge that I'm quite the rebel, but also if for, let's just say Scientology was still a good thing, which I think it once was a pretty good thing in the 70s, and you have that type of organization that says, Scott, you have full amnesty, you can come back. And I knew I wasn't going to be helping a suppressive group, because I'm not talking about going back I didn't say I was going back, okay? So in the 70s, you could get me to go back and go there and follow the rules better than anybody else, because I know the rules backwards and forwards, and I'm willing to cooperate. And that's how good cooperation and good organization goes, is you do your job, follow the rules. And, I don't have the aberrations that I had when I first walked in the door that might, that where I was not only the rebel, but I couldn't think with an organization because I didn't know how they functioned, and I didn't know that you had to, follow policy in order to cooperate and get along, so that you didn't, butt heads with other people. So I have the ability to work and cooperate with people, but I also want the freedom to not to be under an authoritarian structure or take orders from somebody who may not have my best interests at heart, And that's, unfortunately, that's the condition we find aberrated people in. And that's, and we can't say that the Hubbard Bridge de-aberrated everything about us, because we still don't get along perfectly, and we still don't, have it all. But we have the ability to improve lives, and we have the ability to help each other and get rid of a lot of pain and grief and upset. And that's an awesome thing. That's worth doing. That's why I do it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and I want to do it from a point of view of just working out what the truth is fully. Pretty interesting. Just from a, But anyway, I mean, all I know is that with me, it's like I was kind of a better worker when I was more degraded, I guess. Because I don't know, I just find that, like, anyway, we're just going into silly area. So what about Arnie Lerma? You reckon he got assassinated?
I really don't know, Andy. And what I know is that OSA for a long time wanted Arnie's work and wanted him quiet, wanted him gone. That there's nothing in OSA policy or anything in my OSA experience that said that they would actually want to take him out all the way, like what happened. Or he may have taken himself out, and there's a good case for that. So I don't want to say one way or the other. I think there are some questionable contradictions in the story that never got pursued. The case, in other words, the case was closed before some of these contradictions came out. There was a little bit of a push on his part of his friends, and including me, to reopen the case and to get these contradictions out in the open. Caused a lot of grief and fighting. And it, you know, if Ginger is indeed innocent, and she has the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. So I have maintained communication or an open line with Ginger, and as a result, she saw that I was, you know, I did associate with the people who had the theory that, you know, she brought that about, or could very well have brought that about. But I didn't take sides, and I also never attacked her. So I have a website up about all of the events that happened and all of the last things that went on in Arnie's life, and the fact that he was not suicidal, that he was not homicidal. He was a very peaceful person. He did own a gun, and he believed in gun ownership and self-defense. And he and Ginger went out and shot guns. They were both had the ability, and I think they both owned guns and had the ability to fire weapons and defend themselves, which is everyone's right. And there were some domestic issues in the days leading up to this that may have heated things up, either for Ginger or for Arnie, or for both of them. And there's some unanswered questions, and there were some things that appeared to be covering things up. So I tried to put all the truth out there. I'm sorry, I don't have the website in front of me, because I had to make a WordPress site for that. But I was able to recover Arnie's original website, because Ginger finally relented and said, you know, I want Arnie's work back up. It was a mistake to take it down. She had taken it down the year before, and I had already mirrored the site. So I already had Arnie's work recovered and all the way back up, lermanet.org. It was a new site, but it had a perfect mirror of the site 1 month before he passed away. And Ginger finally gave me the original website, lermanet.com, and I put that back up last month. So yes, I have been a mediator in this controversy and conflict. I was a friend of Arnie's. Arnie and I don't agree on everything. He made statements like the tech is all hypnosis, and it made me really look it over. Is this tech hypnosis? And I did my own little study, and I was glad that he made me think about that. Arnie has his own story about how he tried to marry Hubbard's daughter, and it went very bad, and he was actually intimidated mafia style. And so he came to hate L. Ron Hubbard, and I have no, you know, I completely, I got to say, I completely understand why Arnie hated L. Ron Hubbard. And I don't think it was right what the Hubbard family did to Arnie to dissuade him from marrying Suzette, because, and Suzette wanted to marry Arnie. So in another instance of interfering with a free will being and wanting to start a family and a marriage. So Arnie came at things with that angle. See, I understood Arnie because I understood why he had a chip on his shoulder about L. Ron Hubbard, and no problem with it. And Arnie, the thing I liked about Arnie is Arnie took the Scientology experience and he extrapolated it up a notch into the rest of the world and governments and how they run PR and mind control and intelligence. And he and I saw eye to eye completely on that Scientology was a microcosm of what we face on planet Earth. You know, even the abusive cult. We live in a big abusive cult on planet Earth.
Basically, yeah.
Run the cult are called governments, and they pretend that they're working in our interests, and they're really, most of them, I'm sorry to say, are power hungry, you know, they can't be trusted. You take someone like Trump, and I know not everyone likes Trump, and I'm not going to say I'm for him or against him, but I just want to put it there that Trump has managed big businesses, big companies. He may not have done it totally honestly or totally ethically, but at least he knows how to manage a big ongoing concern. And so he doesn't the power, I don't see the power going to his head like it would somebody who had evil ambitions or that couldn't handle power. And I'm not saying Trump handles power perfectly, but what I am saying is that not many people can run a country, and I don't even think anybody should be running a country. I think we should be divided into smaller units, and we should govern our own affairs in those units. And I think mankind has the communications technology and the know-how to manage their affairs peaceably without governments. And that's just my belief. It's kind of ultra-libertarian. I know you're a libertarian. I'm a libertarian. I want liberty. I want freedom.
But this is where everything's so complex, and as you get smarter, you just get deeper. Because then I also subscribe to the dictatorship idea. Like, if I was around in the 60s in the Sea Org, I would be like, yeah, Hubbard, and I would be like, dictator, tell me what to do. You know what I mean? And I'll be going along playing the game. So it's like I'm for both.
Hubbard really was something new, and he had pulled together this know-how and knowledge that nobody else had really done, and in an area no one else had covered except for psychology and psychiatry had tried to cover something of the mind, but they went in a completely wrong direction and never really recovered. They're still not doing much except handing out prescriptions and doing 50-minute sessions that somebody might feel better because somebody listened to them, and that's all they can say. They feel some relief. And we, Hubbard did something quite amazing, no question about it. And anyway, I lost track. You'll have to get me back on.
Oh, well, no, it was just like, as in, I subscribe to dictatorship and libertarianism, and they're sort of complete opposites, really. And but it's just like, that's what I'm saying.
When you have something new, like Hubbard started his new organization, those first years, actually, I take that back. Those first years were pretty heavy. The heavy ethics in the late 60s, starting the Sea Org with all those problems. But once things got on the rails, like around 1969 through through the time that they came ashore to start Flag in 75, things ran fairly smoothly. And, it varies from Sea Org member to Sea Org member, but there's a lot of great memories that are shared. I've heard a lot of great stories. They really liked having Hubbard as the Commodore, being in charge, and everyone was happy. But look at the time track of man's organizations, that you can never make those organizations do that perpetually. It just, some insanity always takes things over, and so the best we've ever had on this planet is the founding fathers of the United States saying, look, we're going to have individual rights, even if they're a minority, even if they're an individual saying, I don't believe in God, that's their right. And they set up the country of rights, and it wasn't perfect. And it was, we're still subjects of the British Empire ultimately, but there's at least there's an agreement. There's a group agreement that freedom is good, that individual rights are necessary. And it's an operating environment that we can have things like life improvement, Scientology, other things that we wouldn't otherwise have.
Yeah, it's good.
Alternative medicine, if you just want to talk about having free choice to go to a alternative medicine and not have to take chemotherapy for your cancer, some poison to combat poison.
Yeah, when I was in America, I could pick up on the freedomness, and I think it's a lot nicer, because I don't like being nannied, the whole nanny state idea and regulations. And Australia, a lot of it is like fear, like, oh, safety, oh, fear, safety, oh, fear, safety, oh. So that's how they justify all this government stuff for all fear and safety. You know, they use it all the time. But America, it's a bit more like there just isn't as much of a government thing. And when the government tries to do something, people stand up and go, hey, what the hell's going on here? And that's what I really like about America. How about we end this off by me asking you about the Alison Mack drama, because I don't know anything about that, but that should be a pretty interesting thing to ask you about, shouldn't it?
Except for I don't really follow that Hollywood story stuff. So I'm completely in the dark, I'm sorry to say, on that issue.
Really? I thought you knew. I thought you'd know about that.
No, I mean, I've seen some posts about it, and I didn't really have time to look into it. So you'll have to pick something else, or else brief me a little bit on it, because I really don't know what I'm talking about with Allison.
Yeah, I don't know. It relates to some. I think. Yeah, I don't know. Was she involved in? I don't know. Still some group, maybe some WISE group or something, or some self-help group.
The NXIVM cult. Okay, I can speak a little bit on the NXIVM cult, because I went into that. The Keith Raniere cult. They were involved in sex trafficking, and apparently she was a recruiter. Since she was a Hollywood star, she had some pull, and she could really recruit these young women into the cult. And certain of the young women that looked like they may be good sexual specimens for their cult leader, Keith Raniere, were groomed, particularly using some mind control, which was mostly NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which is what most of the intelligence agencies use for their manipulation, psychology manipulation.
And what is that though? Because it seems like you try and look up NLP and it's hard to get an idea of what exactly it is. It seems like you talk to someone in a conversation and they say things in certain ways that, like a salesman talk almost, that just trick you, and they can get you doing things. Is that right?
Okay, well, we have a little part of it in Scientology. When we assess somebody for their tone level and we talk to their tone level, we're sort of using an element of NLP, which they probably stole from Scientology. And that is that there are tone levels and there are ways to communicate with people to get them to agree with you. And that's the sales technology of Scientology. Well, when you want to really understand the rest of NLP, is that you really become an expert on body language, and you mirror the other person's body language. In other words, you kind of pose your head, tilt your head like they tilt it. You kind of stand like they stand. You put your hands in your pockets like they do. And they begin to feel more affinity for you because you're like them. And so it's like a very covert sales technique for getting somebody in affinity with you. And then you can sort of manipulate them, and then you can lead them. And it's even been used by guys to pick up girls and things like that. And, NLP is basically body language, being so conversant with body language that you can actually manipulate people with it and with the things that you say. There's also language cues. Certain ways you use words and manipulate the language. That is the same thing they use in advertising. So you're sort of like a advertising guru, pickup artist, and con artist all rolled into one when you really know your NLP. So that's what Keith Raniere's cult was all about. It was all about manipulation of people and learning how to manipulate people.
So what do you mean that cult was teaching people NLP?
Pretty much a big mix. Some of it was a bit, I've heard some of it was akin to Scientology. A lot of it was NLP based, and some of it was just pulled from various religions, the ultimate squirrel group, in other words.
So Alison Mack wasn't a Scientologist?
I guess not, but she was in Hollywood, right? So that she used her position as an actress to be a recruiter for NXIVM.
Okay, then how come I think there's some sort of Scientology connection there? Is it just because that, like...
I think it's because it was posted on some of our Scientology groups, but it's not out of the question that she was also a Scientologist. I just don't know that for sure.
And it had nothing to do with pedophilia or anything?
Well, the cult did. The Nexium cult was into young teenage girls, and there was pedophilia going on in the cult. And one of the leaders, co-founders, I think, was a complete pedophile. But I'm going off of memory here. It's a little fuzzy, but I did look into it because I'm interested in understanding the different networks of child sex trafficking and the organizations that have been formed. And I want to try to help combat it, since I do have this data series and the intelligence flare. But also I know that that's a little bit out of my league, but I care about kids and I care about our society, and we cannot be selling our kids into slavery, and whether even if they're foster kids, and expect to survive as a society or a civilization. We're just going down the tubes if we can't put a stop to it.
Yeah, we're turning into LA.
Yeah, exactly.
It has a bit of a dead vibe, the place there. It's pretty, I mean, like, it was cool though. It had a coolness to it. I could see how maybe in the 90s it would have been really exciting and cool, but
you're talking about LA and Hollywood, right?
Yeah, but nowadays it's like it's really dead. I think maybe the internet's bankrupting Hollywood or something, but it's long-term non-survival actions, and then now it's like it does have just a dead society feeling to it.
Yeah, it's a very sunny and beautiful place, which is what attracted everybody to it, and is why they film there, because they have all these sunny days. It's a wonderful climate, and and it's huge. I mean, so many people there. So there's a lot of good people there. But you're right. There's a lot of degradation in the Hollywood streets, and there's a lot of degradation going on of the entire Hollywood and the music industry there. It's pretty sad. It's
yeah, but I think
a long time.
I think it had to happen and stuff. Like there's a point where all the propaganda that was coming out of the music and TV industries and stuff, it just had to implode so that we stop getting brainwashed by the rubbish coming out of there. But I was in the train station downtown, and I was like, it's just weird. It was just, it wasn't like an alive city. You didn't see like workers with their suitcases walking along. Like it was a dead society. It was just interesting. It was like, what the hell?
Yeah, and that's pretty strange for LA, because everybody's always outside having fun, at least in the old days, so that's pretty sad if that's the case. I was just there this summer, and I had a friend take me to different places, go hiking in different canyons. It was pretty much the good part of town, so I had a nice experience going around that part of LA, and Glendale, which is a nice part of town. But no, I didn't have to go through Hollywood, so I haven't seen it lately. I haven't seen it since I was there as the DSA going out for my annual tune-up or whatever they call it.
Yeah, I think things have changed since 2010. I think that things have changed a lot. I think meth has increased a lot, and homelessness and stuff. And I noticed they were talking a bit about it, like in the papers and stuff, about the problem with homelessness. So it really had increased. It's increased recently, but it was interesting. It's a weird place, and I was having all this weird deja vu shit happen when I was there, and like there was some weird spiritual effect on my mind. It was really interesting. But anyway, like I could feel the energy of it or something. I was like, maybe this is why this is such a big place, because it's got some special energy to it or something.
Yeah, it's got both good and evil, energy-wise there. Yeah.
All right,
it's a very mind control place.
That's what. Yeah, I think it's. Yeah, I think it's a wild place. And the degraded people are just like, what the hell? There's just too many of them. Anyway, so is there anything you'd like to say or ask before I end this interview?
No, just check out my work on freescientology.us. I've got some emergency lists for people who have never done Scientology, who are experiencing depression or addiction or even suicidal thoughts. I would say if you have serious suicidal thoughts, you should call a suicide hotline and talk to somebody. But I have some what's called spiritual rescue techniques that are based on Hubbard's listing and finding out where the charge is, that you can do in a journal or you can do with a partner if you know somebody who knows anything about auditing. And all the links to my work is on freescientology.us, and I really appreciate the opportunity for this interview, and we covered some pretty interesting things, and thanks so much. Good to talk again.
Yeah, and so you deliver the grades, do you?
Yeah, I'm still an auditor. I can do the grades. I can do false purpose rundown, just about any action except for I haven't gone into the L's yet or the upper levels. But I often audit people that are upper level PCs and help them, and people who need specialized actions like interiorization rundown. I do that as well. So
Can you make
I
clears?
travel and I audit. Yeah,
Can you make
I'm
clears?
sorry.
Can you make clears?
Yeah, I audit Ned as well. I have not made it clear yet that I know of, but I get people on the route. I get people moving up the grades and getting their Dianetics and their false purpose rundown.
And you use like the standard grades and stuff, like just whatever the tech is, you just do it.
Yeah, I mean, I have some things which I consider improvements to the Hubbard Scientology bridge, but I only use those on request. If I'm auditing somebody who wants to make progress up the bridge, I do a very good standard technology, standard model session with good TRs and standard actions on the grade chart. So I still use the grade chart, and I think the grade chart's a wonderful model. I think it should be followed. Just like LRH said, Scientology is not a perfect system, it's a workable system. And so I made efforts to make a more perfect system, and that's kind of my research that I do. And I feel like I've reached more people as well. I've specialized in helping older Scientologists who have trouble getting sessionable, or metabolism, reading on the meter, or whatever that's keeping them out of session with other auditors. I have been able to debug, which means basically help get through that barrier with everyone that's asked me to help. So I specialize in that because I'm a class 0 officially from being in the church, but I did all of my co-auditing outside of the church in my training so that I know these other actions. And so what I do is I'm very upfront that I'm not a high class auditor. I'm a class 0. So people a lot of times come to me as a last resort. And so I get some of the rougher cases or some of the people who can't get in session or, have trust issues with other auditors or something. And I help get them going again. And I've got people who have been able to go and finish their bridge with other auditors. I've got people that didn't want to go on with Scientology, but wanted a kind of a resolution of their case so that they could just kind of be stable and very happy and don't do any more auditing. That's what they wanted in the first place. So if someone wants to go up the bridge or not, wants not to go up the bridge, sometimes auditing can resolve the abuse that you went through in Scientology, and then we call it quits at that point if you don't want to go on. So I because of my experience of the cases that I've had to work with and resolve, I've learned a lot about managing tough cases or cases that other people have given up on. So I've had very good success in that.
All right.
And my favorite thing to do has been marriage counseling, because I really love to keep families together and keep people who were once in love, help them find that once again. And the Scientology marriage counseling is awesome. It really works. So I've used that successfully. There have been people who have already had marriage counseling that were still experiencing some issues many years later that I've helped with taking them each in separate sessions separately, and then everything got resolved. And because they had already had marriage counseling, they had that basis, but sometimes people need a little refresher, and that I've done that with some couples. So the auditing that I'm most proud of and that I like doing the most is marriage counseling. But I do all kinds of auditing, and I help auditors and help do training of auditors as well, because I'm a supervisor.
So what about, I mean, do you go to people, or do they come to you?
I go where they are. So I've done a lot of traveling, especially this year. I've done lots of traveling. And I also traveled to Texas to co-audit with my twin, and we've been co-auditing since I got out of the church at the end of 2011. So we've been going for 8 years in our co-audit. It's been great.
What are you doing in your co-audit? What are you up to?
We just co-audited a few weeks ago for a couple of weeks, and I did the LX lists for him. And the LX lists are a wonderful action, and he did those on me, and I'm finished with them. I'm still working on finishing him. And basically we did it as an extension of grade 3. We found that the LX lists worked perfectly on grade 3 because they unburdened the bypass charge of emotion and things like that, the things that handle your ARC break case. And we found that grade 3 was very lean on ARC break processing, and we wanted a full life repair accomplished by the end of grade 3. So we pulled these processes on, and they're working really good.
Yeah, I think I've done an LX list.
Yeah, they're awesome. They're awesome. I just had wonderful results with those, receiving and giving them.
I think I got my first floating tone arm on that. But saying that, I mean, I have, that was, in free zone. So, I mean, I haven't had that much auditing in free zone. So it's like, that could just be a free zone thing. Like when you're not getting screwed over, you just get floating tone arms.
Yeah, and I saw your video on that win, and I thought, that's great. Another person doing the LX list and getting awesome wins. Those things need to be put into use, because that LX list covers our attitudes, emotions, and conditions in life. And people have charge on at least some of those. And that list really helps you find the charge and get it handled. So that's awesome that you got a floating tone arm on that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty good, because it was one of those things when I was involved with the church. I mean, people were getting floating tone arms in the church. It's probably not as common, but you sort of get jealous when other people have them and stuff, and you're like, oh, what's wrong with me? I want to have a floating tone arm,
Yeah. Yep.
What's your website again?
I've seen a few of those as an auditor, and it's been a big win for me as an auditor to start getting them, because in my first few years I'd never seen one, and then all of a sudden I've been getting a few of those on my co-audit twin and on some others. So that's been really cool to see a floating tone arm.
Yeah. So what's your email then?
My email is scott@scottgordonmusic.us. SCOTTGORDON music.us.
All right.
So people can contact me there if they want to inquire about sessions. And again, my website is freescientology.us. And from there, I have many other websites, but from there's a central page, and you can click wherever you want to check out my other work.
Okay, cool. Thanks for coming on the show.
Okay, thanks so much,
Okay.
man.
Have a good day. Well, what is it
You
there?
too.
Is it nighttime there? It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about 10 o'clock at night here.
All right. Cool. Okay, see you later.
All right, take care. Bye.
Okay, so that was the interview with Scott Gordon. I hope you liked it. I told you we had a lot of speculation there, but that kind of makes for an interesting conversation. You've got to go into guest land before you come to conclusions on things. If you like that interview, then maybe you should request a guest. Send me the contact details of a person you would like to be interviewed. Maybe you could arrange the date. Also, send me your Scientology jokes and success stories. I might read them on the show. andynolch@hotmail.com. That's Nolch like mulch, but without the M and the U. It's now time to end off. But before I end off, I've got to end off with a quote. And it's a nice one. It's a short one. It relates to this podcast. The only way you can control people is to lie to them. You can write that down in your book in great big letters. The only way you can control anybody is to lie to them. LRH, L. Ron Hubbard. What a great quote. That's a really good one. It's interesting because I think sometimes the Scientology haters, they use that as a quote to say, see how evil Hubbard is like teaching people how to control people or something. And it's just like, or they say he's saying what he does to control his Scientologists. And it's just like, no, Hubbard's saying that because he's letting people know the truth. Like in all his Scientology stuff, he's saying, hey, the only way you can control people is to lie to them. He's letting people know, about the governments and the psych and the drug companies and stuff and how we're being controlled on Earth. He's saying you're being controlled because you're being lied to. It's lies that enable you to get controlled. It kind of makes you stop and think and go, yeah, is there any situation where someone's being controlled and they're not being lied to? And I guess there is. Like if you got an old person that's getting pushed around by his family in a wheelchair, then he knows he's being pushed around in the wheelchair and he's being controlled by the person who's pushing him around in the wheelchair. And there's not really a lie there. But I guess when it comes to like just the masses in general and stuff, people are being controlled by being lied to. Like people are signing up for all this government stuff because they think there's global warming and stuff. And it's a tactic. It's just a big tool that the SPs use, that our controllers use, is lies. And if you see someone who's like a controlling parent or a controlling person, I mean, they use lies. It's like their tool of the trade. It's just so true. They use lies to get what they want achieved and to control people. I've finished reading Mission Earth, the big saga, which is pretty exciting. I finished it today. And in that story, there are some one-one-y characters, and the way they control people is to use lies. It's kind of like you can use money to control people, like as in, well, we do it every day, don't we, with economics? We get someone to repair our clothes by giving them money. So we're controlling that person. We're saying, hey, you fix my clothes or whatever, and here's the money. So maybe that's a situation where Hubbard was wrong with his quote, but there is no absolutes. But it's like a tool of the trade. It's a tool of like the mafia and powers that be, is that they bribe people to control them. Well, they also lie to people to control them. And that happens a lot with us. And as you do Scientology and as you open up your eyes and awaken to what's going on, you realize there's lots of lies going on in many ways, and that manipulates people, and it controls them. Anyway, that's it for today's show. It's time for you to climb back out of this rabbit hole, out of this interesting Scientology world. I've been your host, Andy Nolch, the Space Cowboy. You have been listening to the Indie Scientology podcast. So remember, what you thought was impossible is possible.